At office, he was checking his mails when he found an explicit video with his rival. Jungkook was always short-tempered and easily provoked person without thinking anything. He went back to mansion to confront Ryan. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension as Jungkook stood with a gun in his hand, his dark eye burning with rage and heartbreak. Ryan stood before him, her hands trembling but her gaze steady, refusing to back down. The man she loved, the man who once promised to protect her, now looked at her as she were his enemy. You think I don't know what you are doing? Jungkook spat, his voice low and venomous. You married me to destroy me, didn't you? Just like your father would have wanted. No, Ryan whispered, shaking her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. That's not true, Jungkook. I love you. I never. Don't lie to me, he roared, slamming his free hand on the desk. The sound made her flinch, but she didn't step back. You think I am blind? I know the truth. I know you have been playing me this whole time. She took a shaky step forward, her voice rising above her sobs. I would never hurt you, Jungkook. Someone manipulating you, trying to turn you against me. Please, you have to believe me. He raised the gun, aiming at her chest, his hand trembling. Don't come any closer, he warned, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotion. If you think I won't pull this trigger, you are wrong. Ryan froze, her heart pounding as she stared at the weapon in his hand, but beneath her fear was a determination stronger than her own survival. If you think I am lying, she said softly, stepping closer despite the danger, then let me prove myself. What the hell are you talking about? Jungkook snapped, his grip tightened on the gun. She reached for the pistol tucked into her waistband, her movement deliberate and slow. Jungkook's eyes widened in alarm, but she raised her other hand in a gesture of peace. I'm not going to hurt you, she said, her voice steady. I'm going to show you the truth. Before Jungkook could react, Ryan turned the gun on herself. Ryan, no, he shouted, but it was too late. The deafening crack of the gunshot echoed through the room. Ryan stumbled backward, blood blooming across her shirt as she dropped the weapon. Pain radiated through her body, but she didn't cry. Instead, she looked at him, her face pale, but her gaze unwavering. I would rather die proving my love for you, she whispered, her voice faint, than live with you believing I betray you. Jungkook froze, his entire body trembled as he stared at her in horror. The gun in his hand fell to the floor with a loud clatter forgotten. Ryan, he cried, rushing forward to catch her as she collapsed. He knelt on the floor, cradling her in his arms, his hands pressing against the wound to stop the bleeding. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining them red. Why did you do that? He demanded, his voice breaking. Why would you do something so stupid? She reached up quickly, her hand brushing against his cheeks. Because I love you, she whispered, tear mixing with the blood on her lips. And I need you to see that. Jungkook's chest heaved as he held her closer, his heart pounding in his ears. Stay with me, he pleaded, his voice trembling. You're not dying. You hear me? You're not leaving. Jungkook, she murmured, her hand falling to her stomach. I am pregnant with your child. His breath caught and his eyes widening. What? I wanted to tell you, but you wouldn't listen, she said faintly, her eyelid fluttering. Please protect our baby, even if you don't believe me. No, he choked out, shaking his head as tears streaming down his face. Don't talk like that, you're going to be fine. I'll fix this, I'll fix everything. With that, he scooped her into his arm. Bolting out of the room, his men, startled by the gunshot, froze in a shock as they saw their ruthless leader running past them, blood-soaked and desperate. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. Jungkook barked order into his phone, demanding the best doctors to be ready. He pressed her closer to him, his tears falling into her pale face. Don't close your eyes, he begged. Stay awake, for me, for our child. As the hospital doors swung open and doctor rushed to take her from his arms, Jungkook stood frozen, her blood staining his hands and clothes. For the first time in his life, the Mafia Lord felt powerless, broken by the weight of his own actions. He dropped to his knees in the hospital corridor, his hands trembling as he whispered, I will make this right, Ryan, I swear. I will make this right. The hospital was eerily quiet except for the soft beeping of machine and the muffled voice of nurses in the hallway. Jungkook sat in the waiting room, his hand stained with wine blood, his head buried in his trembling palm. Guilt consumed him, the weight of his actions crushing his chest with every breath. The sound of hurried footsteps pulled him from his torment. He looked up to see Jimin, Ryan's older brother, storming into the room. His face was a mixture of rage and heartbreak as he approached Jungkook, his fist clenched. You bastard, Jimin growled, his voice trembling with barely restrained fury. You swore to protect her, you swore to love her, and now my sister is laying in the room, fighting for her life because of you. Jungkook didn't respond, his throat too tight to form word. He couldn't defend himself, not when everything Jimin said was true. Jimin stepped closer, his eyes blazing. We may have been rivals, Jion, but the moment she fell in love with you, we dropped everything. My family stopped seeing yours as an enemy because she chose you. And this is how you repay her?